From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. All right, let's go through these end-of-the-term Supreme Court decisions. I'm not going to go into big detail. There are plenty of sources for that. Just do a quick internet research. You'll find all the information you need. But I do want to give you my take on these. All right, starting with end of last week, the decisions handed down on immigration, namely temporary protective status and asylum. This could impact hundreds of thousands of immigrants living in the United States. First of all, Haitians who are here living, working, raising families under the category of temporary protected status because their nation is not safe for them. It wasn't safe when they lived there, it wasn't safe when they left and gained this status in the United States, and it's still not safe. In fact, if they were to return to Haiti, it would even be less safe for them because now they've been living in America for some of them for years, and they'll be targets just for that fact alone. Those who want to do them harm in Haiti will figure, oh, they got that American money on them now. So they got the stink of America on them, and they're going to be sent back to Haiti, where it's going to be even more dangerous than it was when they left. And I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer today or a constitutional scholar, but everything I've been able to read about this thing is bogus. The conservatives on the Supreme Court, if you squint your eyes real hard, they maybe got away with a technicality regarding the law, but they completely dismissed the real-world facts on the ground. And one of them was, and this does get back to the law, again, from what I've been reading, what I understand, the grounds for retracting this temporary protective status is not legal if it's based on race, if it's blatantly racist. And the conservative majority had the nerve to look into the eyes of the American people and say, no, the Orange Menace didn't factor race into this decision to send all Haitians back to Haiti, an S-hole country, a filthy country filled with disease, and Haitians in America bring that disease. They're vermin. They eat dogs and cats. Oh, but no, there's no racism here that we can see, the conservative majority says. Patently ridiculous. The other big immigration ruling last week was on granting asylum at the southern border, and they quibbled over semantics. Well, what does arrive mean? What does in the United States mean? Because according to U.S. law and according to international law, if an asylum seeker arrives at the border, they have the right to apply for asylum and to be heard. Oh, you didn't arrive, actually. You didn't physically cross the border, so you're not in the United States. We can stop you. Even though you've come to within an inch after a 4,000-mile journey, we can stop you and we can turn you away with no consideration. Yeah. The conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court can reverse engineer any decision they want to come to. It's clear to me that they make their decision first, and then they bend and twist and finagle the argument in any way that'll get them there, even if it includes torturing the English language. Arrive. In. This is worse than Bill Clinton's infamous argument about the definition of is. Well, it depends on what the definition of is. Yeah. This is such tortured logic. Not arrived. Well, you're not in the United States, technically. It's like your little brother when he used to put his finger right up to your nose. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Yeah, that's our Supreme Court right now. That's the kind of logic they're using. And it also goes back to a fundamental problem of this entire court session and their allegiance to the unitary executive theory. They think presidents should be all-powerful. In nearly every decision they made, they're giving the president more power than the Constitution intends. Only Congress passes laws. Only Congress creates legislation. It's up to the executive branch to see that those laws are upheld, not to make new laws, not to interpret the laws within an inch of their lives, or in a way that they're not even recognizable anymore. The court isn't even recognizing its own responsibilities. The judiciary itself has an oversight role. So last week, I think it was Friday, right? They handed these decisions down. A very bad day for immigration. which means a very good day for Project 2025, for Stephen Miller, for J.D. Vance's blood and soil philosophy, for all of those white Christian nationalists who want to make America white forever. Yeah, it was a good day for them. And just to toss a little spice into the chili, the state of Hawaii must allow their gun-toting to walk into any private establishment, regardless of the sign on the door. So whatever is good for guns is good for America. And Monsanto, they turned a blind eye to them poisoning Americans. Monsanto can continue to poison us. Okay, that takes us to Monday. Several big cases announced. Looks like the Orange Menace is going to have to pay E. Jean Carroll $5 million. He appealed the case he lost to her, and the court decided not even to hear it. Okay. And in addition, of course, to the $5 million, there's another case that the jury awarded $83 million. He hasn't paid her a penny yet. So he'll continue to draw this out until he dies. But at least the court didn't weigh in on it. They said, nah. The court ruled that mail-in ballots can be counted as long as they're postmarked by Election Day. So leaving it up to the states, again, as the Constitution dictates, the time and manner of elections are left up to the states. So, yeah, no federal law, no presidential executive order can change that. As long as they're postmarked by Election Day, ballots can be counted after Election Day. Now, you might say, well, that's a big loss for the Orange Menace, and I guess it is. He certainly thinks it is. But, there's another way to look at that. Not really. He's just too stupid to know it. Because the argument is that most Republicans vote on Election Day in person, at least the greater number in comparison to Democrats, and the greater number of Democrats in comparison vote early or vote by mail. So I guess maybe in the short term, denying mail-in voting maybe might help the Republicans and hurt the Democrats on the margins, maybe. That's not even guaranteed. And in the long run, it's not guaranteed at all. There's no guarantee about the future. I mean, Republican voters, many of them, most of them, don't vote by mail only because the Orange Menace told them that they shouldn't, that it's not safe, that it's rigged, and they believe him. So in the future here, going forward, there's no guarantee that this gap between Republican and Democratic voters is going to remain the same. If they were successful in banning mail-in votes, in the long run, it would hurt Republicans just as much as Democrats, and possibly more, because there's so many more rural voters, so many more elderly voters on the Republican side. So the fact that the right-wingers on the Supreme Court denied the Orange Menace a victory on this particular case doesn't actually harm him. It might make him angry, like a toddler who's asking for his 5th candy bar, but the mother knows, well, 5 might be a little too many. For the sake of my screaming toddler, I'm going to deny her the 5th candy bar. And I think that's what the Supreme Court is doing here for the Orange Menace. They're stopping him from achieving something that does him no good and might even harm him. So that's my thought on that. Okay, so here's the biggest one of all. This one put in moon landing type font on your above the fold headline. POTUS v. Slaughter. The president can now fire anybody in all of the executive branch, including and especially, of course, independent agency heads. Anybody under those independent agency heads can fire them at will. This is a game changer. There is, in effect, no more professional career civil service in America. Now it's all partisan, all of it. There are over 400 independent agencies, thousands and thousands of civil servants, dozens of independent entities like the EPA or NASA. There are government corporations like Amtrak, U.S. Postal Service. There are any number, hundreds of sub-agencies and boards. We've already seen him attack the National Labor Relations Board. He gutted the Kennedy Center Board. We could go on and on and on and on with all the boards, agencies, and programs that he's either gutted, destroyed, or infiltrated. Well, now, in perhaps the single most important agenda item in all of Project 2025, that all federal workers that fall under the executive branch, all what used to be independent agencies, now in full control of the regime. All except, of course, for the Fed, the federal bank. Turns out you can't fire them. Well, why, you might ask? Yeah, it's a good question. Because the legal reasoning would all be exactly the same. There's no difference at all. So why the exception for the Fed? Well, because the right-wingers on the Supreme Court know who the real bosses are. The wealthy in this nation, the top 1%, they like the independence of the Fed. They count on it. They don't care about anything else. They don't care if the environment is destroyed through the EPA. They don't care if elections are rigged through the FEC. They don't care if public health is threatened by Health and Human Services. All of those agencies can be staffed by loyalists in service only to the regime and to the wealthy. But the Fed? No, that's got to be independent, because they know if a self-serving president can get their hands on Fed policy, that puts them in trouble. So with zero legal reasoning that made any sense at all, the Supreme Court handed the keys to the entire bus over to the president to let him drive it. Oh, except for the Fed, because there it might really matter. So that brings us to the big cases on Tuesday. Birthright citizenship. Everybody's happy that it was upheld, but the fact that it was a 6-3 vote, and the fact that Kavanaugh was just barely a yes, because in his concurring opinion, what he put in writing was that birthright citizenship is not a right, but is valid only because of legislation that Congress can easily change. So technically Kavanaugh was a yes vote, one of the 6, but in his writing he basically encourages Congress to pursue this. And you know they will. So this is definitely not over. This fight is not over by a long shot. The repugnants in Congress will definitely go after this if they have the power to do it, which, midterms might have something to say about that. But if and when they have the opportunity to go after this, they will. They will rewrite federal law, nullifying birthright citizenship. And that legislation undoubtedly will get back to the Supreme Court once more with Kavanaugh's suggestions. So they'll have his vote, making it a 5-4, and they'll only need one more after that. They can grab Amy Coney Barrett or Roberts. Boom. So birthright citizenship is the law for today. We'll see how long we can keep it. We'll only keep it if we keep fighting. And again, central to Project 2025, central to the larger project here. They want to redefine citizenship. Hell, they want to denaturalize U.S. citizens, born or naturalized. They want to strip people of their citizenship. If they had their way, the natural progression of the kind of laws they're after, they can find all sorts of reasons to take away your citizenship, to deport you. Maybe for protesting ICE? Yeah. And then on Tuesday, campaign finance. SCOTUS takes us another couple steps back on that issue, reinforces Citizens United, confirms that money is indeed still speech. And now, in this case, super PACs and the two major parties are allowed to get together. This is like same-sex marriage for super PACs and parties. They can now canoodle. There used to be this separation, which, of course, they got around anyway. But now they can do it right in the light of day. These multi-million-dollar bundles of cash can now openly coordinate with the Republican Party, with the Democratic Party. Unlimited funding, unlimited cash sloshing through our electoral system. So the winners, of course, wealthy donors, the Republicans and the Democrats, the two parties, mostly the Republicans because they've got the richest donors. Democrats have their share, but nothing like the Republicans. Losers, of course, everybody else. The voters, us, the horseshoe populists, those of us who are trying to form a coalition, regardless of left and right. Independent parties, independent candidates. Yeah. This is further collusion of the parties and a further concentration of wealth and power. So the campaign finance decision, a disaster. And finally, trans rights. The sheer ignorance and hypocrisy that allowed them to arrive at this decision. It allows states to ban trans athletes from competing. One of the basic tenets they relied on to make this ruling is that the very concept of sex, the word sex, the definition of sex, is equal to, no more, no less, exactly equal to biological sex. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, sex is not biological sex. This is just basic science. So again, it doesn't ban trans athletes federally. It only allows states to discriminate, to be bigots, to be ignorant bigots. A trans woman is a woman. A trans girl is a girl. That's not my opinion. That's science. There's a whole wide spectrum of how you can be born. Of all the biological characters at birth that are either male or female, any given person may be 90% one and 10% the other, or 70-30, or 60-40, or 50-50. It all depends on nothing but the chance at birth. Now, are the great majority of people largely on one side of that scale? Yes, of course. But many are not. Many folks are legitimately of mixed biological sex. It's just a fact. I don't have to believe anything. I don't have to have any kind of loyalty to any idea except truth and science. So sex does not equal biological sex. Well, you might say still, well, for athletics, you have to draw the line somewhere. Yeah, fine. As we've said many times in this program, there are individual sports leagues that can make these decisions. First of all, it's been found without controversy that boys and girls competing together makes absolutely no difference, really pretty much through grade school. It's only when you get to middle school and high school you start to see minor differences, and then big differences, of course, at college and pro level, of course. So let the governing bodies of the sports decide. There are already guidelines, parameters, qualifying markers that are used in all sorts of sports. I'm fine with those boards, with those institutions, the NCAA in college. Let's see, when I played basketball in high school, it was the WIAA, the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association. Make the rules, whatever you want. I don't care. I trust you. The only role for the federal government is to require fairness, basic equity. That's why we have protected classes. You can't discriminate on race, religion, sex. And this brings us to kind of a sticking point because trans folks are not a protected class. At least if you squint your eyes real tight and you try to find something that's not there, well, of course they're protected because sex is a protected class. And the right-wing court is going out of their way to refuse to see, or rather to lie about the sex of the people they're denying fundamental equal rights. So the only role of the federal court in all of this is to protect trans athletes, not to rubber stamp discrimination against them. Now, there were several cases announced here in the final week. There were some that went against the Orange Menace. The Eugene Carroll case, they ruled he can't fire the Fed governor. They protected mail-in voters. There were a few others that would be considered losses for the Orange Menace. But I would say those few losses actually helped to prove our point that this conservative Supreme Court is fully in line and consistent with this half-century now project of consolidated power in the executive, favoring the wealthy and the corporations, favoring white supremacy, favoring Christian nationalism. So yeah, even though there were some cases that looked like losses for the Orange Menace, no, this is not a mixed bag, as you're going to hear some people say. For the rulings that really matter to the project, they know where they're going and they know how to reverse engineer any decision. They don't give a damn about the Orange Menace personally. They don't give a damn about Eugene Carroll. They don't give a damn about anybody. They are ideological zealots. They believe in ultra-conservative right-wing governance. They believe in a one-party state. And they're doing everything they can to solidify that. You think if and when the next Democratic president is sitting in the Oval Office, they're going to give them the same deference? Again, not because they love the Orange Menace. He is their useful idiot. Especially those pivotal three, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas. He is their useful idiot. The same role he serves for Peter Thiel and Stephen Miller and Elon Musk and Steve Bannon and Mike Johnson, this whole crowd of authoritarian white Christian nationalists. And this reverse engineering I'm talking about is so obvious. I mean, the inconsistency among all of these different decisions. They'll use history when it's convenient. Oh, they love to talk about history. Well, there's historical records, historical precedent. Speaking of precedent, they love to use that when it's convenient, legal precedent. But they're more than willing just to chuck it out the window when it doesn't serve them. Same with real-world impact. Well, what will this ruling mean in the real world? What are the ramifications? What are the consequences of this ruling? Well, we're supposed to be blind to that. We don't consider real-world implications, only the letter of the law. But they will happily reverse that formula if it suits their preconceived ruling. They call themselves originalists or strict constructionalists. It's only what the writers of the Constitution or the law meant at the time it was written. Unless, of course, it's better for their argument that they say, well, the world has changed a lot since then. We have to take that into consideration. They will, with zero sense of irony or self-awareness, any fear of hypocrisy, make both of those arguments, depending, of course, on which one serves their purpose in the moment. The right-wingers on the Supreme Court know the assignment. It's not the Orange Menace. No, it's a 50-year project of authoritarian, oligarchy, white Christian nationalism. They know the assignment. Well, here we are, 4th of July week, the big 250. Some of us have been looking forward to for many years. I was, at the ripe old age of 18 in 1976, the 200th anniversary, the bicentennial. Also my graduation year from high school. It was a big deal. It felt good. It felt celebratory. At the time, I was not the radical that I am now, so I could take some pleasure in celebrating the nation. I take very little pleasure now. You may have heard somebody, Gallup or Pew or somebody, released a big survey showing that a very small number of Americans identify as proud. I think it's silly to be proud of a nation. Unless, of course, it's a nation that you could take some credit for. I mean, if it really was a democracy, and I was an active participant in that democracy, then I suppose, conceivably, yeah, I could feel some pride in a project that we're doing together. How anybody can feel pride about this today, it baffles me. When you say that you're proud of your country or you're patriotic or that you love America, any of these expressions, it seems to me your first responsibility is to have some working definition of what you're talking about, at least. When you say the United States of America, what are you talking about? Are you talking about its history? Okay, well, there's strike one. It's more than cliche, it's simple fact that we stole the land from people who lived here for tens of thousands of years. The country was built, its wealth was built on slave labor. So stolen from indigenous folks, built by slaves, is not a cliche. It's not a left-wing talking point. It's just fact. It's just history. So if you're relying on that to define America, what the hell is there to be proud about? If you define America by its land, by its terrain, from sea to shining sea, well, sure, that's easy to love. It's beautiful. I've traveled a little bit. America is beautiful. I've traveled internationally a little bit. America is no more beautiful than other countries. So that's just silly. You can love nature, as I do. You can love the natural landscape. You can love the mountains, the trees, the seas, the valleys, all of it. Right here in Wisconsin, right just within a short drive, I've got landscapes that are breathtaking. I'm looking at one right now. I'm looking at Lake Michigan. I'm looking at the horizon. It's beautiful. You can go to Wisconsin Dells. You can go to the Driftless region in southwestern Wisconsin. There's beauty everywhere, just within a stone's throw of where you are. Love it. Great. Wonderful. You should. But to be proud of it, to be patriotic about it, well, that's just silly. It makes no sense, especially considering how we've treated the natural world. So there's another strike. How else can you define this country, if not by its history, if not by its land? Well, the people, of course. There again, there's plenty to love. I love my people, not because they're mine, because they're people. I love all people. my love for humanity has no borders. To put special stock into the people here as though they're the chosen people, we're the exceptional nation, that's all BS. So the thing I keep coming back to, if I'm trying to love this country, if I'm trying to have some patriotism, is the idea of America. The ideals put forward in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution. The idea itself, not bad. A government of, by, and for the people, where all of us are created equal. If you just look at those ideas historically, which you and I have talked about even recently, the whole 2 steps forward, 1 step back, the first 200 years of this country, yeah, we made progress. And we kept sliding back, but then we'd make progress again. Should we be proud of that? I suppose to the extent that we were able to make good on some of those promises. I tell you, this is a thin branch to be hanging on to as I'm in danger of plunging into the canyon of pessimism and despair. So sure, progress, abolish slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights. Does that square the ledger on native genocide and 400 years of African American enslavement? Is that a wash? Especially when you consider the last 50 years, when all of the progress we made in the previous 200 has been endangered, if not lost. Hell, women have lost their reproductive rights. The Voting Rights Act has been decimated. Economic justice, environmental justice, once on a righteous path, suddenly put to a screeching halt and kicked into reverse. So, no, there's nothing to be proud of on this 4th of July, without being entirely superficial, without putting on blinders, without being willfully ignorant. That's what it takes. The cognitive dissonance here is so striking that we have no choice. We have to go into deep denial to put a good face on this. The best I can do is to, again, hearken back to the idea. A government of, by, and for the people, where all of us are equal. That's a hell of an idea. Do you remember the quote attributed to Gandhi? It's probably not true, as it turns out, but that doesn't diminish the quality of this quote. So the story goes, a reporter asked, "Mr. Gandhi, what do you think of Western civilization?" And Gandhi responded, "I think it would be a very good idea." That's exactly how I think of the United States of America. I think it's a very good idea. Maybe we should try it sometime. All right. This and all episodes can be heard at the website charlesburcell.com or on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee. Follow us on Blue Sky and Substack. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. All right. I love you. I'll see you out there.